Homage watches. They're very popular with a lot of people. All you have to do is type in Homage watch here in YouTube and hundreds of videos are going to come up. One popular website to purchase Homage watches is AliExpress. Recently, I tried my hand and I bought a couple different Homages from AliExpress. The first one that came in was that Rolex Explorer Homage from Bliger. I've done a full review of this watch. I hope you'll check that out if you haven't already. But in today's video, we're going to do something fun and exciting because I actually have the real watch that the Homage is paying homage to. I have a Rolex Explorer here, and although from this distance, from the camera, you might say they look pretty much the same. But as we get up closer and look at the details, it's going to become very evident that the Rolex is, of course, the better watch and the more high quality watch, which you would expect and which we already know. It's really no contest between these two watches, but it is going to be a fun video to be able to see how good Bliger has done with trying to pay homage to the Rolex Explorer. So let's go over to the table there and take a peek at these two watches side by side. Alright, and here we go. Let's get into this head-to-head with the real thing, the Rolex Explorer. This is the most recent reference number from Rolex. My friend bought this watch back in 2018, brand new. And then we have the Bliger homage to the real thing on the left right here. And just a quick wrist shot. The referee for today's matchup is this Alpina, My Alpina Sea Strong Diver Heritage on a Straps Co. leather strap. So that's the referee for today's head-to-head. Now, like I mentioned already, this is no contest. Obviously, the $7,000 Rolex Explorer is the better watch in every single way, so you have to know that going in. But it will be neat to see some of the differences between the two watches and see if there is anything that is pretty similar, and see kind of where they part ways in different areas. So for the most part, let's just jump into the specs and features. Both are 39 millimeters in case diameter. The lug to lug is pretty close as well. I just need to flip this paper over real quick. Yeah, the lug to lug on the Explorer is 47.3, and then where the bracelet kind of tapers and goes past the lugs there, it's a little under 49 millimeters, whereas the lug to lug on the Bliger is a little bit longer from the actual lugs, 48.5, but the bracelet protrudes quite a bit farther from the case, and that's 53.5. So you can see that there with the real thing and the homage. And that's a big difference because the lug to lug distance on a watch really determines how it's going to wear on your wrist, and so it's something to take note of there. And then while we have it in this position on the side, you can see that the Bliger is quite a bit thicker than the real Rolex Explorer. The Bliger's thickness is 13 millimeters, whereas the Explorer is right around 11.2 millimeters, and you can tell the difference even when it's on your wrist. While we have it at the side, you can see the crystal there on each. The crystal on the Rolex protrudes out of the watch a little bit more than the Bliger, but they are both sapphire crystal. You can also take note that the bezel on the Homage on the left is bigger, it's fatter, it slopes more, has a steeper slope to it. And even when you look at it from the face, you can see that bezel on the Homage is wider and more pronounced there. Also, something that you notice right off the bat is the dial size. The dial size on the Rolex is a little bit bigger than the dial of the Homage on the left. So something to take note of, and we'll talk more about the dial here in a second. Let's look at the case shape in general. Case shape, I think with the Homage, they got it pretty good. You know, it's polished on the sides like the Real Rolex, and as far as the lug curvature, I think they did a good job there. Of course, we already know they got the thickness off, but you know, it's got the polished sides like the real thing. Of course, the bezel is polished. Something they went astray with is that they decided to polish the tops of the lugs, as you can see here, whereas the real thing is that brushed satin, just like the bracelet. So I don't know if they did it on purpose to try and be different, or they got it wrong, but it's not like the real thing. And you can see the lugs here on the Homage look a little bit thicker right by the clasp or the bracelet than the Real Rolex here as well. The crowns are different also. You can see that the crown on the Homage is slightly larger in diameter, and of course the crown on the Rolex is signed, and this one on the Homage has nothing there. They both are polished though, and they did not really match up the ridges very well on these with the real thing. I think they tried their best, but did not do a good job. Now, both of these are screw down crowns. We'll set the Rolex down here for a second, unscrew the Bliger, and you can see this is a non-hacking movement. It's a Miyota movement. I think it's the Miyota 8215. So it's a non-hacking version of that movement. But you can see there's like a cutout portion for the crown into the case. You can see that there as it's pulled out. And on the actual Explorer, there is not that. You see nothing like that on the case. And this crown, when it's screwed in, hugs the case really nicely. So perhaps Bliger was trying to get that same effect of the crown hugging really nicely by, you know, cutting out a portion of the case like that. I'm not sure what they were going for, but just a difference to take note of. Let's see, what else can we talk about here? Of course, on the dial, as we get into it, both black, the Bliger seems to have a little more gloss to it than the Explorer on the dial itself. It's hard to pick up on camera. The indices on the Explorer are a little bit larger in width, and of course the Explorer's indices are made out of white gold, and I'm sure the Bligers are not. Being $70, I'm sure it's a stainless steel. You can see the numeral indices, the 3, 6, and 9, have a little bit different shape on the Rolex. They're a little bit larger than on the Bliger, if you take a peek at that. And of course, different writing on the dial as well. And you know, the movement inside, we're not going to be able to open up these two watches in this video, but of course the Rolex has a complete in-house movement with superb accuracy. It's a superlative chronometer, so it's supposed to get plus minus 2 seconds every day, and the Miyota is closer to, you know, plus minus 30 seconds or something like that. So the movement inside is a huge difference. Let's talk about the bracelets here real quick. The Bliger has done a good job, I think, in trying to match up the look of the Explorer bracelet, that oyster style bracelet. I mean, it's polished on the sides of the links just like the real thing is. They do have screw-in pins here, and for some reason this screw down by the clasp is trying to come out on its own, if you can see that. They are screw-in pins though, but when you have your gloves off and you feel the metal, for some reason the Rolex just has a smoother feel to it. Not saying the Bliger is rough or anything like that, but you can feel the difference. And even just holding these watches in general, although the Rolex is lighter than the Bliger, it feels, of course, to be more high quality. You can just feel it when you hold it, that it is a quality watch. As we move on to the clasp, just mention the case back real quick. Let's open this up. Of course, it has that really plain Jane case back, and the Bliger has copied that pretty well, which is not too hard to do, I would say. And now that screw is getting in the way. Can't really open it. I'm gonna have to put that screw in before I can open it. I'll be right back. Well, I'm not sure how that screw came out, but we did end up getting it back in, so we can open the clasp now. And we'll talk about the clasps in a moment and compare the two, but I just wanted to showcase the case back. Not hard to do to replicate a plain case back like the Explorer has. But they have done some things different. They did put this polished portion ring there, which it's not polished on the Explorer. And then the center part is heavy brushing, but it's not smooth at all. You can feel the roughness of it, especially with bare hands, whereas the real Rolex is not rough at all, even though it's just that deep brushing look to it. It is smooth on the real thing. Just something to take note of. Moving on to the clasp, let me buckle these back up here. There is quite the difference between the clasps. First of all, you can see right away the size. The size of the Rolex clasp is much smaller and slimmer and thinner. Both have polished sides to them, and they both have a similar look to them as well. Something important to note right off the bat is that the Bliger has literal sharp edges on them, and if you're not careful, you could probably cut yourself on these corners. It looks like the Rolex has those same sharp corners, but they're not sharp at all. They're done in a way and finished in a way where, although they're pointy, they're not sharp, and I don't feel like I could actually cut myself on them. So a lot better finishing there. Well, let's start here. Of course, we have the Rolex Crown there on this portion that folds over, opens really nicely, and then you have this little lever here that you just lift up to detach the little latch, and everything works great. Beautiful polishing there and no issues. Everything engages really well and closes up and is strong. As far as the clasp goes on the Rolex, now it's not really the case here on the Bliger. I've had a hard time with this little lever. I try and do it with just my pointer finger. I can't really get it. I really have to use my thumb and then pop it off. And this little lever here really doesn't have the same spring as the real thing. I don't know if they didn't put a spring in or what, but there is no real spring, and so it's a lot harder to detach that latch with this clasp, so not very fun to use in that way. Just by way of comparison, you can see popping that open is really easy, but it engages and is strong. You're not going to be able to rip that off, but you can see that there's some nice spring to that there, which makes it nice and easy to detach. So that's the type of thing that if you want it, you're going to have to buy the real thing. You're not going to find it on a Homage, at least not this one. Something to take note of here, there is an easy link system on this clasp with the Rolex Explorer. You get 5 millimeters of quick adjustment there with that. With the Homage from Bliger, it's a little bit different. They have this glide lock feature. You pop it out and you can glide it up and down there and adjust it that way. I'm going to put up some wrist shots here so you can see these two watches side by side. They're both comfortable in their own way. I think being lighter, the Rolex Explorer is more comfortable, and of course that lug to lug distance being shorter on the Real Explorer makes it fit better on my wrist, but you can see both of the wrist shots side by side and see how they look. And of course the thinness of as well of the case with the Explorer is a lot nicer also. Let's see, am I forgetting to talk about anything? Yeah, we need to do a Loom Shot, because this is one major difference between these watches. Rolex is using their proprietary Chromalite loom, which looks great, and Bliger is using some sort of loom, but it's definitely lackluster, as you'll see here. So let me charge both of these watches up and we'll do a quick loom comparison between the two. Well, there they are on the table. Let me bring them a little bit closer here. You can see, and the camera doesn't do it justice, but there's a huge difference between the loom. Obviously, you get the nice blue chromalite with the Rolex, and for some reason, I don't know why, on the Bliger, there's like not nearly the same amount of loom on the Arabic numerals as the rest of the indices, so you can barely even see them right now. I'm not sure what's going on there, but man, that chromalite is beautiful on the Rolex. Alright, just a few other things to note before we close out this video. One thing is the water resistance. Bliger claims that this has 30 meters of water resistance, and of course the Explorer has 100 meters, so that is a big difference. You probably could jump in the water with the Rolex, but probably not the Bliger, and who knows how trustworthy that 30 meters is anyway. Another thing is the sound of the movement. Let me shake the Bliger and you can see, well, hear how loud that rotor is when it spins around. Let me see if we can demonstrate that. You can hear it spinning. I trust you can hear the movement. Now with the Explorer, it's completely silent. So that is a really nice touch. Can't even hear the rotor moving at all. Well, that's all that I have with this comparison. I'm going to get back in front of the camera and share some final thoughts between the Real Explorer and the Bliger Homage. Well, there you go. That was a quick and fun little side-by-side comparison of the Real Rolex Explorer to the Bliger Homage from AliExpress. Like we said in the beginning, no contest, but it is fun to put them side by side and see the differences there between the two. I hope you enjoyed the video. There are not too many videos on YouTube comparing the real thing to the Homage, so I hope you'll give a like to the video for that and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. And perhaps I missed some details as we put these watches head to head and tried to point out some things. If I did, if I missed something, let me know. And if you have any questions about the two watches or one of the watches, let me know that as well down in the comments. I'll try and answer those as best I can. Thanks again to my friend for loaning in his Rolex Explorer to the channel. And stay tuned. Perhaps we'll be giving away this Bliger Explorer Homage at some point in the future. So stay locked into the channel. And if you're not subscribed, get subscribed right now. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you next time here on J City Reviews.